still love this place. When I got off the plane on Wednesday, I'm like, I should come back here and live. It's a great city for me, and I just love the heat and the humidity, which most people don't like.
Well, you got a suit on here.
Well, I came from a Hall of Fame event, and so they just announced in their class. So
you're not sweating?
Not yet.
Ralph Sampson, once loved as basketball royalty, is now 65 and has finally opened up on the allegations that pulled him down, ending his career for good. How did a hero fall so far? And why did he never get back up on his feet? Join us as we dive into the details of these allegations and where he is today. The fall from grace. Allegations, prison, and silence. Ralph Sampson's story is one of the most dramatic in sports history because of the shocking contrast between who he once was and what he later became. He had once been celebrated as basketball royalty, the towering giant who inspired awe every time he stepped on the court. Yet years later, headlines about him no longer spoke of greatness, championships, or his legendary presence in the game. Instead, they were filled with allegations, legal battles, and the painful image of a man who had fallen far from the heights of his youth. The troubles that marked his post-basketball life shocked many who remembered his glory days. One of the darkest clouds hanging over Sampson's later years came in the form of child support battles. The courts found that he owed more than $300,000 in back payments for 2 of his children. For a man who had once stood as a national figure, adored by fans and admired by young athletes, this became a devastating public embarrassment. Newspapers and television reports repeated the same story over and over again, painting him as someone who had not lived up to his responsibilities. The case dragged on and became a permanent stain on his reputation. People no longer remembered the shots he made or the trophies he lifted. Instead, they remembered the accusations that followed him from one courtroom to another. What had once been respect was slowly replaced with judgment and disappointment. As if the child support battles were not enough, Ralph Sampson's troubles deepened in the year 2006. That year, he was convicted of mail fraud after hiding a steady income and a large home during his legal cases. The punishment may have seemed small on paper, just 2 months in prison, but the damage it did to his name was much greater. For a man who had once stood taller than life, being sent to jail was a reminder of how far he had fallen. The image of a former star entering a cell was hard for the public to understand, and it left many asking how the gentle giant of basketball had ended up in such a situation. The fall was made even worse by the way the media framed his story. Instead of highlighting the dominance of his college career or his early years in the NBA, reporters brought up the moments of failure again and again. They reminded the world of the infamous fight with Jerry Sichting during the 1986 finals, when Sampson lost his cool and threw punches at a player much smaller than him. They reminded people of the string of injuries that cut his career short. They brought up the financial struggles that became public knowledge. Every mention of his name seemed tied to failure, scandal, or ridicule. Few spoke about his Rookie of the Year award, his incredible teamwork with Hakeem Olajuwon, or his buzzer-beating miracle against the Lakers. Instead, what stayed alive in the headlines was a narrative of wasted talent and broken promises. During these years, Ralph Sampson chose silence. He did not rush to defend himself. He did not stand in front of cameras to explain his side of the story. He did not try to fight the negative image that grew around him. His refusal to speak only made things worse. When people do not hear from the person at the center of the storm, they are left to believe the loudest voices around them. In Sampson's case, those voices were filled with mockery and criticism. For many years, the towering athlete, who had once been the face of college basketball, became a quiet shadow, letting his past mistakes speak louder than anything else. Fans who once cheered for him in packed arenas were left wondering what had gone wrong. But silence does not last forever. Now, at 65, Ralph Sampson is finally ready to set the record straight. After years of keeping quiet, he is speaking openly about his mistakes, his struggles, and his journey through the darkest parts of life. And to understand why this fall from grace hurts so deeply, we have to take a few steps back to where it all began. When a young boy in Virginia grew taller and stronger than anyone imagined, and the entire nation believed he was destined for greatness. From Virginia to stardom, long before the headlines of scandals and struggles, Ralph Sampson was a boy growing up in the quiet town of Harrisonburg, Virginia. From a young age, it was clear that he was unlike other children. By the time he reached 9th grade, he already stood 6 feet 7 inches tall, and by the time he was fully grown, he towered over opponents at 7 feet 1 inch. Yet what made him so special was not only his height, but the grace with which he moved. He combined size and skill in a way that left everyone watching in disbelief. In high school, his games became more than just sporting events. They became spectacles. Crowds packed gymnasiums not just from his town, but from across the state. Scouts and reporters traveled long distances just to see the tall teenager who seemed destined for greatness. Sampson did not disappoint. He led his high school team to 3 state championships, dominating the court with a presence that made the game feel almost unfair for those who played against him. By the time he graduated, he was one of the most heavily recruited players in the country. His decision to attend the University of Virginia made the college a national center of attention. From the moment he stepped onto the court, he carried both the weight of expectations and the hopes of a program that believed he could lift them to new heights. At Virginia, Ralph Sampson delivered on the promise. Across his 4 years in college basketball, he averaged nearly 17 points, over 11 rebounds, and more than 3 blocks per game. Yet statistics alone did not capture the full picture of his dominance. He was named the Naismith Player of the Year 3 times, an honor he shared only with Bill Walton. He also won the Wooden Award twice and was a consensus All-American in 3 separate seasons. His accomplishments were unmatched. More than the numbers, his leadership and presence set him apart. He took Virginia to the Final Four, gave the program its first NIT championship, and showed the nation that the hype around him was justified. Coaches and teammates admired not only his skills, but the way he carried himself under immense pressure. In an era when every move he made was followed by cameras and reporters, he remained calm, focused, and respected. The media embraced him like no other college athlete of his time. He appeared on the cover of Sports Illustrated 6 times in less than 4 years, turning him into a national figure long before he ever played in the NBA. Every article, every headline, and every photograph fed the idea that Ralph Sampson was basketball's next great superstar. In 1983, the Houston Rockets selected him as the first overall pick in the NBA draft. The team had been struggling with a poor record, desperate for a player who could change their future. From the very start, Sampson showed he was ready for the challenge. He averaged over 21 points and 11 rebounds per game in his first season, earning the Rookie of the Year award unanimously. The gentle giant from Virginia had successfully made the leap from high school prodigy to college legend, and finally to professional star. Twin Towers, miracles, and mistakes. When Ralph Sampson arrived in the NBA, he immediately proved he belonged among the best. But the true turning point in his professional career came when the Houston Rockets drafted another towering center, Hakeem Olajuwon, in the following year. Together, the two men became known as the Twin Towers, a pairing that struck fear in the hearts of opponents. Both were over 7 feet tall, both were skilled beyond belief, and together they seemed like an unstoppable force. The partnership worked better than anyone could have imagined. In just a short time, the Rockets went from being a struggling team to a true contender. Their size and strength dominated the paint, and their ability to play off each other made them almost impossible to guard. For fans in Houston, it felt like the birth of a dynasty. The rest of the league began to take notice as well, with experts predicting that the Rockets could rule basketball for years to come. That prediction seemed closer to reality in the year 1986. The Rockets made a powerful run to the NBA Finals, knocking off teams that had once seemed unbeatable. Their biggest triumph came against the Los Angeles Lakers, a team that had dominated the Western Conference for years. The Lakers were filled with stars and carried the reputation of being nearly untouchable. Yet the Twin Towers stood firm, leading Houston to a shocking victory in the conference finals. The moment that defined the series came in Game 5. With the score tight and the pressure almost unbearable, Ralph Sampson took a twisting, off-balance jumper. The ball bounced around the rim before finally dropping through as the buzzer sounded. That miracle shot sent the Rockets to the NBA Finals and instantly became one of the greatest moments in franchise history. For Sampson, it should have been a crowning moment, proof that all the hype surrounding him had been deserved. But just as quickly as things rose, they began to unravel. In the finals against the Boston Celtics, the Rockets faced a team filled with toughness, talent, and championship experience. Emotions ran high, and in Game 5, the calm and composed image of Ralph Sampson cracked. He became involved in a heated exchange with guard Jerry Sichting, who stood more than a foot shorter than him. Frustration boiled over, and Sampson threw punches. The fight spilled into a bench-clearing brawl, and the sight of the 7'4" center swinging at a much smaller player shocked the basketball world. The incident instantly changed the way people saw him. For years, Sampson had been viewed as the gentle giant, admired not only for his game, but for his calm nature. That image was shattered in a single night. To make matters worse, Boston fans and players mocked him relentlessly afterward. Celtics star Larry Bird joked that even his girlfriend could beat up Sampson, and the crowd seized on the insult, chanting and taunting him. Suddenly, the man who had once been a figure of respect was being ridiculed and humiliated. As the ridicule grew louder, Sampson's body began to betray him. In the same year of 1986, he suffered a back injury that left his lower body numb for hours. Though he eventually returned, he was never quite the same. His movements were slower, his dominance dulled by pain that would not go away. The following year, disaster struck again when he tore cartilage in his knee. This injury could have been manageable with careful recovery, but Sampson made a decision that would haunt him. Desperate to return in time for the playoffs, he rushed his rehabilitation. He pushed his body before it was ready, ignoring the warning signs in his quest to help his team. This choice, driven by passion and determination, ended up destroying the future he still had left. His body gave out completely, and the once unstoppable giant became a shadow of himself. Public perception, however, told a different story. Many believed Sampson simply did not want to play hard enough. Critics accused him of being soft, lazy, or uninterested in the game. They did not see the endless hours he spent trying to recover, the painful practices, or the desperation that drove him to risk everything. In just a few years, Ralph Sampson had gone from miracle maker and finals hero to a player mocked for fighting, doubted for his heart, and broken by injury. The dream of a long and dominant career slipped away, leaving him to face a very different reality. And as his playing days ended far earlier than anyone expected, Sampson entered a new phase of life, one that would prove even more challenging. Life after basketball, struggles and allegations. Ralph Sampson's retirement came far too soon. For a man who had been expected to dominate the league for over a decade, stepping away after only a few short years felt like an incomplete story. Yet injuries left him with no choice. Once the cheers faded and the bright lights dimmed, he faced the challenge of discovering who he was without basketball. That journey proved far more difficult than anything he had experienced on the court. The first challenge came with identity. From the time he was a teenager, Sampson had been known only as a basketball star. Every headline, every camera, every fan expectation was tied to his performance. When his career ended, that identity was gone. He struggled to find purpose in life without the game that had defined him. Like many athletes, he faced the painful reality that fame fades quickly once the spotlight moves to the next generation. Finances also became a major problem. During his playing days, he had earned well, but poor financial decisions, failed business ventures, and mounting responsibilities drained his resources. He did not have the steady foundation that many thought a player of his status would build. Instead, money slipped away, and soon debts began to rise. The most public of these financial struggles came in the form of child support battles. Things worsened when details emerged that he had concealed income during his legal battles. He had been receiving a steady monthly amount and living in a valuable home, but those facts had not been disclosed to the courts. This misstep led to more legal trouble, and in the year 2006, Sampson was convicted of mail fraud. Though the sentence was only 2 months in prison, the impact was devastating. The media embraced this new narrative of failure. Headlines no longer mentioned his dominance in college or his Rookie of the Year success. They did not recall the miracle shot against the Lakers or his leadership at Virginia. Instead, every story tied his name to allegations, unpaid support, fraud, and disgrace. His once proud reputation became a cautionary tale, used as a reminder of what happens when athletes lose control after their careers end. Perhaps the most painful part was the silence that followed. Sampson did not rush to defend himself or explain the struggles that had brought him to that point. Without his voice, the negative narrative only grew stronger. He became a symbol of wasted potential, defined not by the greatness he achieved, but by the mistakes that followed. For years, Ralph Sampson lived in the shadow of these failures, carrying the weight of public shame and personal regret. But time has a way of bringing perspective, and eventually, he found the strength to look back at his life with honesty and humility. And as he reached his later years, something remarkable happened. The same man, once defined by failure, began to rebuild his legacy, finding redemption and meaning in ways that had nothing to do with basketball. Redemption at 65, a legacy beyond basketball. Ralph Sampson's story did not end with his fall from grace. The same man who once stood at the center of the basketball world, then stumbled under the weight of injuries, financial troubles, and legal mistakes, found a way to rise again. It did not happen overnight, and it did not come without pain. But by the time he reached 65, Sampson had discovered a new kind of purpose, one that reached far beyond the hardwood court that had once defined him. In many ways, recognition for his athletic brilliance came back before he even fully repaired his image. He was inducted into the College Basketball Hall of Fame, an honor that reminded the world of his extraordinary dominance at the University of Virginia. Soon after, his name was placed among the legends in the Naismith Memorial Basketball Hall of Fame. These moments did not erase the darker chapters of his past, but they reminded fans and critics alike that his talent had once changed the game. He had been more than just a fallen star. He had been one of the greats. Yet for Sampson, trophies and awards no longer carried the same weight they once had. After years of public humiliation, he wanted to be remembered for something deeper. That desire led to the creation of the Winter Circle Foundation, a project that became the centerpiece of his redemption. Through this foundation, he dedicated himself to guiding young people, offering mentorship, promoting education, and steering children away from crime. For him, greatness now meant lifting others, not simply scoring points or grabbing rebounds. He often explained that helping a child with homework or encouraging a young person to stay in school was more meaningful than anything he had ever achieved on the court. The man who once stood under the bright lights of packed arenas now found joy in small, quiet victories. Each student he reached, each life he influenced, felt like a win greater than any championship. Slowly, the narrative around him began to change. He was no longer seen only as a cautionary tale, but as a figure who had endured mistakes and emerged wiser. When the University of Virginia unveiled his portrait, it felt like a homecoming of the highest order. The very place where his journey to stardom had begun now embraced him again, honoring his legacy not just for what he did with a basketball, but for the man he had become. At 65, Ralph Sampson finally began to speak openly about the mistakes that once haunted him. For decades, silence had fueled speculation and strengthened the harshest judgments. But now, with the perspective of age, he shared his struggles with honesty. He acknowledged the pain of injuries, the rush to return that cost him his health, the financial missteps, and the poor choices that led to legal trouble. Instead of hiding from the past, he used it as a lesson for others. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.